Hey there, ready for a deep dive today? We're heading over to Spain, where it feels like they're battling a double whammy, wild weather, and some intense political drama all happening on October 9th, 2024.
It's true, and we've got our finger on the pulse with these two articles straight from RTVE, that's Spain's national public broadcaster, for those who don't know.
Exactly. No stale news here, just straight to the source.
Yeah.
And, we're not just going to tell you what happened, but we're going to break down what it all means, the human impact, those ripple effects, the stuff that really makes you think.
You know what they say? Sometimes truth is stranger than fiction.
That's for sure. Okay, so first up, picture this. You wake up in Spain, but instead of that famous sunshine, you're met with, well, Borrasca Kirk, a serious storm system unleashing its fury across the country.
Yeah, borrasca. That might be a new word for some listeners. Essentially, it's the Spanish term for a low-pressure system, but, cranked up to 11. Think torrential rain, those powerful winds, the whole dramatic weather shebang.
And this one did not come to play. Our article from RTVE doesn't hold back on the details. We're talking 9 people injured. One woman in Vigo got hit by a falling tree, and 2 others were hurt in a car crash caused by a massive dust cloud. The wind was picking up debris like it was nothing.
It's easy to hear 9 injuries and kind of move on, but, each one of those is a person whose life was disrupted, a family worried sick. Those aren't just numbers, they're stories of resilience in the face of this massive storm.
Right, and speaking of disruptions, imagine you're cruising on one of those high-speed Alvia trains in Spain, the kind that just eats up the miles, and then, bam, a tree decides to take a little nap on the tracks. 130 passengers stranded had to evacuate. Talk about throwing a wrench in your travel plans.
Oh, tell me about it. And that was just one example. Flights were canceled, planes got diverted. Borrasca Kirk basically said, nope, not today to anyone trying to travel. It just goes to show how these things have a domino effect. It's not just individuals, it's entire systems that get thrown out of whack.
Yeah, for sure. And the chaos didn't stop there. Borrasca Kirk also had a bone to pick with buildings. A school gym in A Coruña roof ripped right off. Classes canceled. The music conservatory in Santiago de Compostela, same deal, no roof. Even the Tres Mares hospital in Reynosa lost its roof, and a supermarket in the same town had roof damage too.
It really makes you think about how we often take these structures for granted, like they're permanent fixtures in our lives. But then a storm this powerful comes along and shows just how vulnerable they really are.
It's like the storm played a giant game of pickup sticks with buildings.
But here's something interesting. The article makes it clear this wasn't just random destruction across the entire country. It was concentrated in the northern half of Spain.
Exactly. Regions like Galicia, Cantabria, and Castilla y León bore the brunt of it. We're talking wind speeds clocked at a staggering 205 kilometers per hour at the Mirador del Cable in Picos de Europa. I mean, that's hurricane force wind.
Wow. Can you imagine strolling through the park in Oviedo or Avilés, usually bustling with people, and it's deserted because of this storm? It really paints a picture of the storm's impact. This storm really makes you think about how we prepare for these extreme weather events, especially as we see more and more of them. What can we learn from this as our climate continues to change?
It's kind of wild to think that while all this was happening with Borrasca Kirk, showing us just how powerful nature can be, there was another storm brewing. This one in the heart of Spain's parliament.
Right. Almost like a real-life drama unfolding alongside nature's show.
Exactly. And at the center of this political drama is a brand new law. And on the surface, it sounds pretty straightforward. It's all about making sure prison sentences from other countries are factored into Spanish sentences in a consistent way. Seems reasonable, right?
Well, yeah, until you dig a little deeper and realize just how complicated things can get. This law, it's not just some bureaucratic paper shuffling. This thing could have a huge impact on convicted members of ETA.
And I know we throw around these acronyms, but for those who might not be as familiar, could you give us a little background on ETA?
Absolutely. ETA stands for Euskadi ta Askatasuna. It's a Basque separatist group with a long and, I'll be honest, pretty violent history in Spain. They were fighting for independence, but their tactics involved bombings, assassinations, kidnappings. It left a really deep scar on Spanish society.
So when we talk about this new law and how it could affect ETA members, we're not talking about some small legal detail here.
Not at all. This is about the very real possibility of reduced sentences for people who committed some horrific crimes that still cause a lot of pain and division in Spain.
Which explains why things in Parliament sounded more like a volcano erupting than a calm debate.
You can say that again. Our RTVE article puts us right in the middle of this heated exchange, and let me tell you, sparks were flying. Opposition leader Feijóo did not hold back. He basically accused Prime Minister Sanchez's government of straight up breaking promises they made to ETA victims.
And knowing the weight of ETA's history, that's a serious accusation to make.
It really is. It brings up all this trauma and mistrust. It suggests that the government is putting the needs of convicted terrorists above the pain of the victims and their families.
And Fijo didn't stop there. He kept the fire burning with phrases like, prisoners over budgets. And then he went on to accuse the government of making a secret deal with Bildu. That's a Basque political party that some see as sympathetic to ETA, saying they have swallowed it.
Talk about powerful language. He's trying to provoke a reaction, and it shows how strategic language is in politics. Feijóo wasn't just debating a law, he was crafting a narrative of betrayal and broken trust.
But Prime Minister Sanchez wasn't about to just sit there and take it. He shot back, accusing Feijóo of playing politics with an incredibly sensitive issue. He even used the phrase ETA as a trump card.
Classic countermove, right? Instead of directly addressing the heart of Feijóo's argument, the victims, Sanchez tries to change the focus. He wants to make Feijóo look like he's exploiting a tragedy for political points.
Not to mention, he threw in a little dig of his own, asking if the opposition is more clumsy than it seems for voting for the very law they're now criticizing.
It's like watching a chess match unfold with every word carefully chosen to gain an advantage.
Totally. And just like a good political thriller,
Yeah.
it wasn't just a two-man show. We had other voices jumping in, each one turning up the heat. Gabriel Rufián from the ERC, that's the Republican left of Catalonia, for anyone keeping track, accused Feijóo's party of being totally hypocritical. And then you've got Alberto Catalan from the UPN, the Navarro's People's Union, going so far as to say that Sanchez would be personally responsible if a notorious UTA member like Texapote is released because of this new law.
And it's important to remember that this wasn't some abstract policy debate happening in a bubble. Our article mentions that Maria del Mar Blanco was actually in Parliament during this whole exchange. She's a prominent ETA victim. Her father was murdered by the group. So just her presence there was a powerful reminder of the real human cost of this whole issue.
Makes you think about the nature of debate itself, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially these days. Like, are we really listening to each other, trying to find some common ground? Or are we just talking past each other, stuck in our own little worlds?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's not just happening in Spain. This whole thing about opposing views getting amplified by emotion, by history, by political games, it's everywhere you look.
It's like we're almost programmed to react instantly. Pick a side and refuse to budge.
And that's why it's more important than ever to think critically. It's easy to get swept up in the heat of the moment, you know? When you hear phrases like prisoners over budgets or ETA as a trump card, it's going to trigger a reaction. But what does it really mean to engage with these issues in a meaningful way? Especially when they're so closely tied to people's pain, their memories, their desire for justice.
It's a tough one. And, you know, as we look at these two stories side by side, the storm and the political battle, I can't help but notice how they both expose a certain vulnerability.
That's a really interesting connection. On the one hand, you've got Kirk, this raw, untamed force of nature. It's a reminder that for all our technology, we're not really in control. And it shows just how fragile the things we build can be. And then on the other hand, you've got this political storm raging. And it reveals a different kind of fragility, the fragility of trust, of understanding, of a shared sense of national identity.
And maybe that's the common thread here, this idea of vulnerability, these forces outside of ourselves that can shake us to our core, whether it's a natural disaster or something like this where it's about social contracts and shared history.
Like a wake-up call. You know, even in our modern world, with all our technology and interconnectedness, we're still deeply connected to the physical world, to the weight of history, to the complexities of human emotion.
It's a lot to process, that's for sure. And honestly, I don't think there are any easy answers. But if there's one thing I hope our listeners take away from this deep dive into Spain's very eventful October 9th, it's a sense of curiosity, you know, a desire to dig a little deeper, look beyond the headlines, wrestle with the nuances, and engage with different points of view, even when, and maybe especially when they challenge our own.
Well said. And who knows, maybe that's where we find a way forward, that willingness to listen and learn. That's how we weather the storms, both the real ones and the metaphorical ones that we all face together.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll catch you next time.